Hi and welcome to my workshop. First of all, if you watched any of my previous videos, you might be wondering why this one is in English. A couple of reasons. First one is that I really like English and I really like to use it. And I'm a teacher and one of my subjects is English, so I'm really into speaking English and reading in English and writing in English and all that stuff. The last couple of years though, I haven't taught many English classes because my other subjects were needed more at my school, so I'm also missing English a little bit. I read a lot in English of course, but of course speaking is a different matter, and if you don't use the language often it gets worse, and I wanted to make sure that I have enough speaking practice. So the other day when I watched a video by a German YouTuber who also does his videos in English, I realized that I might try that too and that this would give me the speaking practice that I'm actually missing. I'm not saying all of my videos are going to be in English from now on. I haven't decided yet. I'm just giving this a go and see how it feels. Of course, if you want to comment in German, that's absolutely fine. But now to the project. My kids have come to like Star Wars recently and they have wanted lightsabers for quite some time. So in this project I'm going to show you how I built them some lightsabers from some cheap materials, but I have to say they're not intended to be exact replicas of any of the lightsabers used in the movies. My kids are still quite small, they haven't seen the movies, they've just seen some other material, so they're not expecting any identical copies, they just want some kind of lightsaber. Another point is that while these are not expensive that I made, you might get even cheaper ones ready-made, but of course that's not the point. The point is that Dad made it. If you want to see how I built them, stick around.
The idea is to have a wooden handle hollowed out with an LED flashlight inside and an acrylic glass pipe, some kind of transparent plastic, sticking in at the front so that when you switch on the LED flashlight, its light travels along the transparent pipe at the front and makes it glow. First I cut some 60mm by 60mm spruce construction wood to size so that it finally was in cross section 45 by 45mm. The size of that cross section depends on the flashlights that you're using. Mine were about 32mm at their widest, so the 45mm cross section was the smallest I could get. After these rib cuts were done, I cut them to length. First only roughly, and then I use some plywood as a stop to make both handles exactly the same length. Then I marked the center of each handle, the point in which the Forstner bit was going to be set. And then I had to prepare the drill. I don't have a real drill press, but an electrical drill mounted on a stand, which is quite high quality. But I really made sure in this case that the fence for this drill press table was absolutely at the right angle to the drill, since I was going to drill a really deep hole, about 14 centimeters deep, and of course at such a depth even small variations would be noticeable. The first hole though was going to be the one in which the lightsaber itself, the acrylic pipe, was going to be stuck in. This was about 6 centimeters deep with a diameter of 25mm. I then used a slide gauge to measure how deep the other hole would have to be. Basically, I had to drill all the way from the other side up to the bottom of the hole that I had already drilled. This was about 14 centimeters, so I had to use an extension rod for the Forstner bit, because otherwise its shaft wouldn't have been long enough. I used a piece of tape to mark the point of depth that I was going to need to stop. And then it took some drilling, because 14 centimeters with a diameter of 40 millimeters took quite some time to drill. Then I used the router to cut a bevel to the edges. And then I marked some more spots where I was going to cut off part of a corner, because I wasn't liking the shape of the handles as they were at that point. I wanted them to get a little thinner towards the blade of the lightsaber. And for that I needed to mark some spots and draw some lines to get an idea of what it's going to look like. Then I made a little jig, because these corners were going to be cut off at a 45-degree angle. I just made the jig using my eye measurement. The exact angles were not that important. It was just important to have them all at the same angle. This, of course, was a bit dangerous to do. If you do it likewise, you have to be really concentrated at that point. Finger gets quite close to the blade. You should really focus on what you're doing at this point. Then I changed the router bit to a rounder bit, because I wanted to round the center of the handles so they were easier to grip for my kids. With the planing stop and that surface clamp by Veritas, it was very easy to attach the handles to the workbench so that they didn't move. Afterwards I sanded the handles. At first I was surprised that only very little wood got sanded off, until I realized that I had forgotten the sandpaper. After I put that on, it worked much better. Then it was time for testing, putting in the flashlights and testing how deep they were in, because I had to insert some kind of stop off behind them so that they wouldn't come out again. And the idea was to just drill a hole and put in a thick piece of wire just behind the flashlight, so that it was kept in place. I first tested this and it worked okay, and so I drilled the holes into the handles. I drilled them from corner to corner because there's more wood in the corners and I didn't want the material to break at the relatively thin sides. Then I cut the wires to length. And filed off the edges so that they were nice and round. Then I could assemble the whole thing. If you drill a 3mm hole, a 3mm wire will slip in just fine. It will stick to the wall enough so that it won't come out, so there's no glue needed. Then a final round of sanding with a grit of 240. Then it was time to cut the pipes. They are made of acrylic glass, some kind of transparent plastic. Diameter is 25mm. And after that I measured the inner diameter of the pipes and cut a strip of transparent colored foil which I had bought so that it corresponded to that inner diameter. Make sure that this foil can handle a bit of heat and that it is transparent. I cut that strip, and before I put it into the pipe I pushed a small piece of cloth through the pipe to get out any dust, and then I just rolled that strip and pushed it into the pipe. It was a bit difficult, but it went okay. I cut off the piece that stuck out. And then I could just stick that pipe into the handle and the whole thing was ready. You have to make sure that you use an LED flashlight because it doesn't produce any heat. If you use a regular old-fashioned flashlight, it will produce too much heat inside that handle. You can see that that wire is a bit in the way of the switch of the light of the flashlight, but it is still possible to switch it on and off. So this is what the whole lightsaber looks like, and this is what it looks like if you switch off the light in the room.
My kids really like the lightsabers that I built them. Thanks for watching. Until next time.